Love makes fools of us all. I had once believed in it, wrapped myself in its warmth, trusted its promises. But love, as I learned that night, was nothing more than an illusion, fragile, deceptive, cruel. Rachel, my wife of 18 years, had been my heart, my home. Every glance, every whisper, every stolen moment had convinced me we were unbreakable. But I was wrong. I arrived home late, exhaustion pressing against my bones. My business trip had stretched longer than expected, and all I wanted was to collapse into bed beside my wife, kiss her softly, hear her tell me she missed me. Instead, I walked into a nightmare. The house was quiet. Too quiet. The warm glow of bedroom lights spilled into the hallway, and as I stepped closer, muffled voices reached my ears. A deep chuckle. Rachel's voice, breathless, teasing. My stomach twisted. My fingers trembled as I pushed the door open an inch. What I saw tore me apart. Rachel, tangled in sheets, her body bare, her lips pressed against another man's skin. Her golden hair fanned across the pillows, her hands roaming his chest. Their limbs entwined, lost in pleasure, oblivious to the devastation standing just outside the doorway. My breath hitched. My vision blurred. I wanted to unsee it, to erase the image, to pretend this wasn't real. But the truth was right there, raw and undeniable. A strangled sound escaped me before I could stop it. Rachel's head snapped toward the door. Her blue eyes widened in horror. "Daniel," she gasped, yanking the sheets over herself. "It's not what you think. Not what I think." The absurdity of it almost made me laugh. The man beside her, tall, lean, dark-haired, didn't even bother covering himself. He sat up, smirking, entirely unbothered by my presence. "Well," he drawled, stretching his arms. "Guess the husband's home." My fists clenched. "Get the hell out of my house." Rachel scrambled to her knees. "Daniel, please, let me explain." I took a step forward, fury burning through me. "Explain." My voice was ice. "What could you possibly say to justify this?" She reached for my hand. "I made a mistake." I jerked away. "A mistake." My chest heaved. "You were moaning his name, Rachel. That's not a mistake, that's a choice." Tears welled in her eyes. "I never meant to hurt you. Yet here we are." The man chuckled. "All right, this is getting awkward." He slipped out of bed, reaching for his clothes. I turned on him, rage boiling over. "If you don't leave right now, I swear." He held up his hands. "Relax, man." She came to me. A dark, ugly silence filled the room. Rachel's lips parted. "Daniel, I didn't want to hear it. I couldn't. My love for her had died the moment I saw her in another man's arms. The woman I had cherished, the woman I had built a life with, was gone." I turned on my heel and walked out, ignoring Rachel's desperate cries. As I stepped into the night, the weight of betrayal pressed down on me. I had lost my wife, and I had no idea how I would tell my daughter. The morning sun rose, but it didn't bring warmth. Instead, it carried the weight of a broken home, a fractured heart, and a truth I never wanted to face. My wife had betrayed me, but the hardest part was still ahead. I had to tell my daughter. Emily had always been my pride. At 17, she was sharp, independent, and fiercely loyal. She had inherited Rachel's golden hair but carried my dark eyes. I had raised her with love, with values, with the belief that family meant everything. But now, what was left of that belief? I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the untouched coffee in my hand. My suitcase sat by the door. I had packed my things overnight, too disgusted to sleep under the same roof as Rachel. The house still smelled like her perfume, a scent I once found comforting but now only made me sick. Footsteps echoed down the stairs. Emily appeared, dressed in an oversized hoodie, her face still drowsy with sleep. She yawned, rubbing her eyes. "Dad!" Her voice was groggy. "Why are you up so early?" I forced myself to meet her gaze. "Emily, we need to talk." She frowned, stepping closer. "What's wrong?" I swallowed the lump in my throat. "Your mother and we're getting a divorce." Silence. Her expression froze, confusion flashing across her face. What? I exhaled slowly. I caught her with another man last night. She blinked. You're lying. I flinched. I wish I was. Emily's jaw clenched. No, she shook her head violently. Mom wouldn't do that. She did. Her hands balled into fists. You're leaving over a mistake? My patience thinned. Cheating isn't a mistake, Emily. It's a betrayal. She slammed her hand against the table. So that's it? You're just giving up? Giving up? I let out a humorless laugh. Your mother was in bed with another man. How am I supposed to stay? Her eyes filled with tears, but they weren't for me. You're the one breaking our family, not her. Anger twisted inside me. She broke it the moment she invited another man into our bed. Emily's lip trembled. I hate you. The words hit harder than Rachel's betrayal. Emily, I whispered, voice cracking. I wish you were never my father, she screamed before spinning on her heel and running upstairs, slamming her door behind her. I sat there, frozen, feeling every ounce of my world collapse around me. Rachel had taken my marriage. Now, she had taken my daughter too. I was truly alone. I sat in the car, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. The sting of Emily's words echoed in my mind, louder than the honking cars and chatter of early morning life outside. I wish you were never my father. That sentence cut deeper than Rachel's betrayal. I had expected anger, sadness, maybe even disappointment, but not this. Not complete rejection. I glanced at my phone. No messages. No calls. My daughter had made her choice, and it wasn't me. With a deep breath, I pulled out of the driveway, knowing I had nowhere to go. The house I had built, the life I had fought for, was no longer mine. A lonely existence. Days passed in a blur. I checked into a cheap motel, my suitcase still half-packed. I barely ate, barely slept. The silence of an empty room was suffocating. Rachel had called, once. A pathetic attempt at an apology. I didn't answer. Emily didn't call at all. I wanted to believe she'd come around, that time would make her see the truth. But every day that passed without a word from her felt like another nail in the coffin of my relationship with my own daughter. Until the night I received the call that changed everything. A shocking revelation. It was late. My phone vibrated on the nightstand, and for a moment I debated ignoring it. But something in my gut told me to look. Unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. Hello? A woman's voice, shaky, desperate. Is this Daniel Carter? Yes. I'm calling from the police station, she continued. Your daughter, Emily Carter, has been brought in. My heart stopped. What? She was found in a bar with an older man, the officer explained. She was heavily intoxicated. We need a parent to pick her up. I was already grabbing my keys. I'm on my way. A painful reunion. The police station smelled of coffee and regret. A bored-looking officer led me to a small waiting area, where Emily sat slumped on a bench, arms crossed, face pale. She looked up when I entered. Her expression was unreadable, tired, defiant, ashamed all at once. I sighed, kneeling in front of her. What the hell were you thinking? She scoffed. Like you care. I clenched my jaw. I got a call in the middle of the night because my underage daughter was drinking with some creep. Yeah, I care. She rolled her eyes. He wasn't a creep. He was an adult taking advantage of a drunk 17-year-old, I snapped. What do you call that? Silence. I rubbed a hand down my face. Let's go home. She looked away. I don't have a home. A sharp pain twisted in my chest. You always have a home with me, Emily. She swallowed hard. Even after what I said? I nodded. Always. Tears welled in her eyes, but she quickly wiped them away. I'm sorry, Dad. I pulled her into my arms, holding her tight. I know, sweetheart. For the first time since that awful night, I felt like I hadn't lost everything. The drive back to my motel was quiet. Emily stared out the window, her fingers nervously tapping against her thigh. I stole glances at her, my heart heavy with emotions I couldn't put into words. My daughter, my little girl, had almost been lost to a dangerous world, all because she had been blinded by her mother's lies. I pulled into the parking lot, cutting the engine. "Come inside," I said softly. Emily hesitated. "Mom's expecting me home." Anger flared in my chest, but I kept my voice calm. "After what just happened, you really think she cares? She let you go out drinking with some stranger." Her eyes darkened, but she didn't argue. Instead, she followed me inside, sitting on the edge of the bed while I poured her a glass of water. She took a slow sip. "I was stupid." I sat beside her. "You were hurt." She sniffled. "I wanted to believe Mom. She said you were just being dramatic, that you couldn't handle the fact that she needed something more." I clenched my jaw. "Something more?" Emily swallowed hard. "She told me you were distant, that you didn't love her the way she deserved, that you were weak." I let out a humorless laugh. "Weak?" She nodded, shame flashing in her eyes. "I believed her. I thought maybe you'd done something to push her away." I took a deep breath, forcing down the bitterness. "And now?" Tears welled up again. "Now I see the truth." I hesitated, then reached over, squeezing her hand. "It's not your fault, Em. Your mother manipulated you." She wiped at her face. "I was so awful to you." I shook my head. "You were hurt. You needed someone to blame." A long silence stretched between us. Then, she whispered, "Do you still love her?" The question hit me like a punch to the gut. Love? No. Love had died the moment I saw Rachel in another man's arms. But the pain? That still lingered. "I don't know if I ever really knew her," I admitted. "The woman I loved wouldn't have done what she did." Emily stared at the floor. "I don't know if I knew her either." Those words shattered me more than anything. Facing the past. The next morning, Emily and I returned home. Rachel stood in the kitchen, sipping coffee, looking as though nothing had happened. Her hair was perfectly styled, her lips curled into a smile that made my blood boil. "Well, well," she mused. "Look who's back." Emily stiffened beside me. I stepped forward, my voice firm. "Emily knows everything now." Rachel's smile faltered. "I don't know what lies you've been telling her, Daniel, but—" "They're not lies, Mom." Emily's voice was steady, cold. "I saw it myself. You never cared. You just didn't want to lose control of me." Rachel's eyes widened. "Sweetheart, that's not true." "It is." Emily's hands clenched into fists. "And you know what? I don't care what excuses you have. I'm going to live with Dad." Rachel paled. "You don't mean that." "I do." I almost felt bad for Rachel in that moment, almost. She had destroyed our family, played the victim, manipulated our daughter. And now, she was finally facing the consequences. Emily turned to me. "Let's go." Rachel called after her, but Emily didn't look back. And as we walked out of that house, leaving the past behind, I realized something. I had lost a wife. But I had regained my daughter. And that was all that mattered.